Hey guys, let's review Fairy Fencer Advent Dark Force and Refrain Chord, now that I have finished with both games. Pretty much as any other review in this channel, once I have finished the game, let's break it down in 4 main topics: story, gameplay, graphics, and music. Also be sure to check the timestamps in case there's a specific topic you wanna check. The first question about these games might be, is there a link between both of them? And the answer is yeah, there is a link, but it is kind of cheap, so let's go by parts. In Advent Dark Force, the story begins with our main character Fang, who visited this city and finds a fury stuck in the ground, but as he is the chosen one in this story, he was able to pull it out, and that's how Fang got to meet Erin, the fairy inhabiting the fury. Moments later, because he had no money, he tried to steal a piece of bread. Unfortunately for his luck, he was apprehended and thrown into jail. After Erin finds a way to release Fang from this place, they start looking for more furies, but in their first attempt, they find a girl named Tiara, who gave Fang a tea with paralyzing leaves. After some dumb moments later, and once they accept to work together, Tiara explains that she wants to revive the goddess, and for that, they need to retrieve many furies. That's pretty much how the story begins. But let's focus why I said it was kinda cheap the way Refrain Chord was implemented. The order in which these actions happened is the same, but in Refrain Chord, Fang is once again thrown into jail because he tried a food challenge. However, because he had no money, well, you can see where this is going. The only difference is that here we are talking about a crappy idea: multiverse. Yeah, I am not a fan of this concept, because it is a way to add, change, and turn whatever you wanna do just because it is a multiverse, and that is pretty much explained at the beginning of Refrain Chord. But does that mean the whole story is bad? Not really, it has its moments. In Advent Dark Force the concept already exists, but the way it is worded is much more interesting because, depending on your actions, you will get one of 3 endings. The decisive moment is more or less at the middle of the game. In all honesty, this one was a really good story because despite having its silly moments, there were serious ones, and the story turns quite dark, intriguing, and the game is not insanely long. Refrain Chord may be seen as you are playing the same game once again, but story-wise is different. In Advent Dark Force the story focuses into the gods, and Refrain Chord the story revolves around certain events that happened in the past. The order of events is going to be similar as Advent Dark Force, but it expands the lore and actually explains some moments from Advent Dark Force, because there are different comments about the structures and places, but they are not concisely explained. Nonetheless, this can be perceived as you're playing the same game. That, I won't deny it, because the order of future events is similar in Refrain Chord, and something that grinded some of my gears is that in Advent they literally said some names, but I found none of them in Refrain Chord, so meh, multiverse I guess, or maybe they decided to scrap that idea. Other question that may arise is, are we going to have the typical idle game because of the introduction of Leur and Glace? No, but don't expect that. It is part of the main theme, but do not expect it as some other games where they hardcore turn serious franchises into idle stuff. On the funny side, here they make several jokes about that. However, the rest I'll explain it in the music section. Okay, we have new characters. The story is kinda similar, it expands the lore. What else is there to be added aside from another cliffhanger? It has its moments in the story. While it is as silly as the first one, the humor in this game in my opinion was better, and maybe a bit harsher in some other topics. If these were not shown as visual novels, with ease this game could be rated M, so yeah, it also has those moments. And despite adding particular characters, their introduction wasn't forced. Actually, I can say they are likable, and of course they make funny jokes about some circumstances. And once again, at the near end, the story turns serious once again. I don't want to spoil it in case you are interested in the game. However, the ending was maybe not as impactful as I thought it would be. It was good nonetheless. I will say, in this category, Advent is an 8.5 and Refrain a 7.5. For the gameplay, they are completely different. In Advent Dark Force we play in third person, exploring different areas, and the battles are done as in other Idea Factory games. Every character has particular roles, and this game is stupidly brutal in many moments. The idea of the game is collect different furies, use them in the revival ritual to get different bonuses, shape the world to get advantages, rinse and repeat as the story progresses. It is a rather simple game, with some freaking bosses that can destroy your whole party in one turn. What I can say is that there are many battles where your team is going to be symbolically wiped out, and some other battles where if you aren't thinking in a well thought strategy, one turn, that's all you need to see the game over. The general length of the game may be something around 35 hours in normal. Hard in this game is unforgivable of mistakes, so keep that in mind. However, you can change the difficulty, and for ease to get the different endings, you can carry over everything, and finish the New Game Plus in around 5-10 hours. Here the Furies are going to fulfill an important role, because they increase different stats and give different extra skills. The normal difficulty isn't that important unless you are going for the true ending. If that is the case, what you wanna do is use the right Fury and character together to exploit the bonuses as much as possible. By defeating the enemies you will get points to unlock some other skills and of course increase your chances to survive. While in combat, you can let these actions play or just skip them altogether. What is going to be the hardest part is to position your units in the right place as the battle progresses. There are some enemies that have areas of effect freaking big that it feels like they are cheating. But this of course also brings the satisfaction to beat the heck out of them. And depending from the route you unlock, you'll be able to play with different characters. So despite having to revisit the same places, the strategies are going to change because of that. There are some other mechanics as the alchemy, but in all honesty, you might not really use it but for a fury, some bonus data, and a couple of extra skills to help you explore some dungeons. What is tiring about this game is that you will have to explore the same areas a couple of times. And if this game looks similar to other Idea Factory games, it's because they are part of a project known as Galapagos. Dead End Requests, Dragon Star Partner, and this one are part of it. What I would have liked is to have deeper dungeons, like the jail or the last dungeon, where you need to gather different items to keep progressing, because 80% of the dungeons are pretty much a straight line. Refrain Chord is a strategic RPG where once again the different characters have a specific role, but here because of the Furies you can further specialize that role or let's say open other roles, a subclass. My only complaint regarding this is that there are not as many physical Furies as there are magical ones, so there is a little balance issue until late in the story. The pace is kind of similar, but here you don't have the exploration part. It is like the older Fire Emblems, where you talk about different things and then you jump into these fights. Here the battles are on the chaotic side, because oftentimes in a couple of turns the battle can be finished. Compared to other games in this particular genre, this one is on the easy side, up until really late chapters, where there are some difficulty spikes, and strategy becomes much more important. Here something to notice is that I never felt the need to farm, but I have to upgrade some gears and improve strategies. The muses here are going to fulfill an important role, because they evolve your characters, and if the area of effect touches one another, the bonus is increased substantially. These in late fights can turn the tides of the battle a lot, because enemies can one-shot summon characters. And it is also important to have a balance between characters, because some enemies have a specific defense, so they turn pure physical or pure magic into thrash. Unfortunately, those peculiar fights are really late in the game, and some of those bosses may need to be cheesed as they are quite special. Regarding the boss topic, it felt a bit lacking. I was expecting something similar as Advent Dark Force, where the enemies are unforgiving. Here some of them are just sponges of HP. Once you have a solid team, you'll survive to many fights, but they take a lot of time to beat. If you are not up to those fights, don't worry, they are optional encounters that you get in the Shaping World. In this game that mechanic is a bit different. It is more like you are playing a kind of lottery. You can find furies, dungeons, items and so on. In a normal playthrough you won't be able to open all these areas, so keep that in mind in case you want to complete it. There is where you will find the last A rank furies and of course some crazy challenges. Another negative point are the maps. While some of the maps are kinda detailed, you won't really use most of the areas. As I said at the beginning, these battles just focus on small sections, so it feels a bit pointless to have a big map. And of course they are going to be repetitive, so it has a similar effect as Advent Dark Force. It turns a bit tiring. In general the game is simple up until late fights where it really turns into a strategic RPG, where every move matters. Nonetheless, I had fun playing both games. The scores in this category are 8 and 7.5. For the graphics, yep, those are the ones that are kinda lacking. In this section I don't just talk about the general performance, but also creativity and some other topics related to visual part. In general both games look decent. The versions that I played are the Switch ones, so there is nothing particularly crazy going on here. I didn't feel the issues while playing. Maybe some drops in some animations or while executing some attacks, which personally I don't mind, but they exist in case it is important to you. Refrain Chord has a loading screen, which I am sure it takes longer in the Switch. Other than that, the game closed once, so try to save both them just to be sure. And those are the technical aspects of it. They can be really annoying for some others not so much. But keep it in mind in case you want to get one version or the other. Regarding the creativity, I like the concept in both games. It has quite unique looking areas with so many weapons in the ground, or the kind of architecture used in different places. Nonetheless, that charm is quickly lost, as you will have to see this map several times, where the general enemy design is entertaining for the most part. Some enemies look really good, some others are more about a joke. In all honesty, this is the weakest point in these games. But I cannot be harsh on them, because Idea Factory is not a AAA studio. If I were to compare them with Square Enix, it would be unfair and dumb. So to me, it is a 7 and a 6.5. Because you will see repeated enemies to no end, and the difference between both games is pretty much non-existent. However, I like the general creativity and that first impression they give. In Advent Dark Force there are intriguing places. Maybe that is what Refrain Chord needed the most. And for the music, Advent focuses much more into something like rock pop, some metal tracks here and there with the classic goofy ones, while Refrain Chord changes to pop and rock pop, while also keeping the goofy tracks. The game that brings many things to say is Refrain Chord, because it uses an interesting concept with the muses, where they have the classic idol songs, and the way they are composed is rather simple but sticky. Personally, I like the Glass songs much more, so in the gameplay I try to use Fleur buffs before letting Glass brings her own. That way, what ends up happening is that Fleur tracks become like a secondary voice, while letting the rock pop tracks shine. This particular effect is nicely done because of the composition. It follows the new trend to bring the climax as fast as possible, but without losing its charm. So every song reaches the climax at 40 seconds more or less. That way, they were able to combine completely different tracks. Personally, I like the concept and found several combinations appealing. However, in a normal playthrough you won't really change that much the dynamic, because in most cases you buff HP, attack or magic attack. The other point is that these tracks are rather simple in their composition. That can be seen in the music sheet the collector's edition has. On the bright side, if you are a novice who wants to have a couple of partitures to play the main songs, it is a good option. Despite being simple, I like them. If you feel like it is not of your taste, you can completely turn those vocals off and keep the other combat tracks. What I liked the most in Advent Dark Force were those metal tracks. As usual, Idea Factory doesn't disappoint in the kind of metal tracks they bring. They match the kind of battle you are having against several bosses. The scores are 8 in both games. I definitely like them, and the rearrangement in the newer tracks was of my liking. The final scores are 7.8 and 7.3. They are good games, but I wouldn't recommend them to everyone, as it is a niche game. If you like colorful anime style, where the story swings between dumb and serious moments, then yeah, I will say you might enjoy these games. Otherwise, I wouldn't really recommend them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.